Good morning, everyone. We're going to wait just a minute for people to log into the webinar and then we'll get started. Thank you. All right, thank you so much for joining us today. Good morning or good evening. Today's webinar is on a very interesting piece of research, and I'm looking forward to discussing it with the authors. So I'm Pam Kennedy, a research analyst with Stimson's East Asia program, and joining me today are Ardeth Maung, a professor of political science at the University of Massachusetts Lowell, and Naw Moo Moo Paw, a PhD student in the Global Studies Department at the University of Massachusetts Lowell. And today we're discussing a very complex political situation at a very local level in Myanmar, the administration of local territories and populations. And the big question is, how do administrators at the level of these townships and villages respond to the opposing influences of the junta and the resistance? And what can we learn from this dynamic about the situation on the ground? So our two speakers published research exploring the role of local authorities in Myanmar earlier this year in a paper titled Agents of the State or Revolution: Resistance, Accommodation, Violence, and the Role of Local Administrators in Post-Coup Myanmar in the journal Democratization. And I have put a link to the paper in the webinar chat so that you can all check it out on your own time, and it will be up on the Stimson website as well. If you'd like to ask a question during the webinar, please send in your questions at any time through the Zoom Q&A function, and we'll take audience questions in the second half of the hour. So to kick us off, Professor Ardeth will start by introducing the research. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much, Pen, for the introduction and for giving us the opportunity to share with you our preliminary findings. I call it preliminary findings for the reason that I will explain later. But this is part of our ongoing research on that looks at the emerging local governing structure and arrangement. So we particularly look at the role of local authorities, especially the one who served the military junta since the coup. And these local authorities occupy a very interesting precarious situations because they're caught between central authorities, which are the military junta officers, resistance movements, and also local populations. So their actions can either strengthen the military junta, either by strictly implementing the military policies or by providing crucial information to the resistance movement, or by helping the military arrest alleged supporters or members of armed resistance. Or their action can also strengthen the resistant forces by providing support to the resistance movement. So you can see here that their role has become increasingly important, especially in a very highly polarized and repressive environment. And under this type of environment, such as the one in Myanmar, local authorities' ability to mediate conflict, to minimize violence perpetuated by conflicting armed groups, and to protect and advocate for the local community is highly valued. So here in this research, we try to identify factors that explain variations in the behaviors and practices of local authorities. Because of the limited amount of time that we're giving, we're just going to provide a very a superficial analysis or general key findings, and hoping that, so we left out a lot of nuances, and we hope that we can talk about these nuances during the discussions or during the Q&A session. So my task here is to give you an introduction. I'll talk about our research questions, our research method, and some of the background, the context within which our research is located. And I will hand over to Moo Moo Paw, who will present some of our key findings. So here are our research questions. What are the different ways in which local authorities have responded to military coup? And what explain variations in their responses? How are local authorities perceived by local residents, military authorities, and members of the local resistance movement? And then finally, to what extent local authorities play a role in preventing and escalating conflict in post-coup period? So here is the structure of Myanmar territorial and administrative formation here. You can see that it's highly, hold on. It's highly hierarchical. So we are looking at this, village tract and ward authorities here. You can see here that several households make up village, which is referred to the rural area, or ward, which is referred to urban areas. Several villages made up village tract, and several village tracts made up townships. Townships make up districts, and districts made up states and region. Currently, that we have 14 states and region in the country. So we're mainly looking at village tract and ward authorities level here. We're looking at them because they have the official position to the extent that they're occupy the lowest administrative unit of the country, and they draw salary from the state. The rest of the one below them are sort of like informal leaders, and although they still play a very important role in the pre-coup as well as post-coup period, but we mainly focus on village tract and ward authorities here. During the military rule in 1990-2010, these village tract and ward authorities were appointed by the General Administrative Department, which is the administrative machinery of the entire country, and which was under the military control. However, between the quasi democratic periods between 2011 and 2020, there were some reforms going on in terms of village tract and ward authorities being indirectly elected by 100 household leaders. And also in 2017, the GAD also came under the control of the civilian government. So these are, I would say, significant reforms measures during the 2011 and 2020. However, after the 2021 military coup, the GAD came under the control of the military. So these local administrative authority came under the control of the military and generally seen as the agent of the state. Their role is extremely important because they basically perform all the tasks associated with local governance. They help maintain law and order, they mediate disputes, they coordinate social and community activities. They are in charge of controlling the population, either in terms of keeping record of household household registrations or visitors information. They provide important recommendation letters for local residents to travel, to get passports. They also are one of the key actors who sign various contracts, house sale, land contracts, and even in divorce cases. And most recently, they're also responsible for collecting conscripts for the SAC, which is the name for the current military junta State Administration Council. And this conscription law was imposed in February 2024 and mainly limited to young men between the age of 18 and 35. So this is a data by the ACLED of the numbers of local administrators who have been killed since March 2021 to, I would say, April 2024. And you can see the color coded areas reflecting different region. And these data, however, include township authorities, whereas we only look at village tract level authorities. But you can see here that, the immediately following the coup, the numbers of local authorities who have been assassinated, presumably by the resistance movement, have increased and decreased a little bit, and it just went up by March 2024. This is immediately after the implementation of the conscription law. Let me talk a little bit about the research methods. Our research is based on the survey filled out by 26 respondents, and 22 of them are our local researchers in another ongoing project, which looks at evolving political, economic, social situations in various parts of the country. We also conducted in-depth interviews among 51 respondents from Yangon, Sagaing, and Kaya. Yangon is here, Sagaing here, and then Kaya is in the eastern part of the country. And among these interviewees, two of them are happen to be the local administrators themselves. We picked these three areas because we have easier access to the respondents there. So, so that is the reason why I say that this is a preliminary finding. We also, so it's not representative or comprehensive. We also rely on secondary sources, such as aggregate data by ACLED or SAC Myanmar, which I'm going to talk about. And then also we use, conventional media and social media. There are words of caution for that. We use these secondary data to reflect on the general situations rather than treating them as accurate facts, because it is extremely difficult to verify data in highly repressive atmospheres. Again, this is not a comprehensive representative sample, but the preliminary finding gives us a glimpse on a range of the emerging local administrative arrangements and the challenges and the obstacle, the coping strategies developed by these local administrators. And also our research was conducted in 2022, 2023. So, given the rapidly evolving situation in Myanmar, our finding, we can say that it's not updated, but we can say that based on our other ongoing research, some of our key concepts stay whole, but stay has yet to be tested on a larger scale. So here is the current situations in Myanmar, expressed in terms of a geographical map by SAC Myanmar. And this SAC Myanmar should not be confused with this SAC military junta. This is Special Advisory Council of Myanmar. And the map shown here, you can see there are color-coded areas. The area expressed in white are the areas controlled by the military junta, and the yellow one is the area controlled by their proxies. The darkest areas are the one the areas controlled by resistant movement or ethnic armed groups. Most of them are currently fighting the military. So after the coup, there has been escalations of violence, especially after the military crackdown on unarmed protesters. Many of these unarmed protesters, most of them are young people, fled to the areas controlled by existing ethnic armed groups. Many of them have fought the central government for greater autonomy and minority rights since independence period, since Myanmar gained independence from Great Britain. So you can see here the map between 2022 and 2024. You can see that the areas controlled by resistance movement expressed in the darker colors have expanded since 2022. And it's even expanded further after June 2024. The one in the lighter areas are the one where active armed clashes are occurring, and the ones that the military has already lost control. But the resistance movement has not really been able to administer the areas. So across the country, the local administration controlled by the state has collapsed. And in many areas, and now it's controlled by the military regime. And in many areas, the local administration barely function. And the ability of the SSC to have control over the local administration vary depending on who control the areas and the level of resistance by the resistant groups. So you can see here we have SSC control area, and this is overlap or control areas, overlap areas of authorities between SSC and SSC-friendly groups. This is a mixed areas, overlap control of authorities between SSC and groups that are fighting the SSC. And this is the areas controlled by ethnic armed resistant groups. And again, situations have evolved and changed. For instance, some of the groups that used to be SSC friendly are now fighting the SSC. And we are mainly focusing on these two areas, area E and G. This is where the SSC control area and the mixed area between SSC and anti-SSC forces. And in these areas, we would say that the local authorities face the highest risk and the most difficult challenges because the resistance is high. So if you look at most of the local governing structures controlled by the SSC, most of their functions are now basically limited to controlling the population, trying to undermine the resistance movement. Not a lot of activities have been focused on providing services to the populations or providing physical security to the populations. So again, this is the data provided by the ECLD. You can see that the highest number of local administrators killed, assassinated are from Sagaing, Yangon, and Mandalay. These are the three regions considered to be Burman majority dominated areas where the NLD or the National League for Democracy Party had overwhelming victory. They have a strong support there compared to minority ethnic areas. And NLD is the party that ruled the country between 2015 and 2020. And it also won another landslide victory, which was the reason the military staged a coup, because on alleged fraud practice of the elections. I'm going to skip this breakdown at the township level, but here what I want to show is where our respondents are located. We have our surveys mainly focus on the role of local authorities and the relationship they have with the local populations. And their political affiliations, so on and so forth. But the interview focused on a different matters, which is how local residents are dealing with different types of violence and the type of coping strategies they use. So that's also another paper that will be coming out very soon. And we use the 51 interviews because respondents occasionally mention the role of local authorities. So we find some of the statements and some of the interview notes very helpful in making up this research. And again, 2 of the respondents themselves are local administrative authorities. So based on the 25 surveys, the percentage of the actually 26 surveys, the percentage of these are the local administrators, and a majority of them are middle-aged, between 51 and 60. A majority of them are male. Many of them have completed either middle school or high school degree. Very few of them had college degree. And overwhelming majority of them have a full-time job. So you can see that most of them are doing this job, and the amount of salary they got is also very little. So doing this job as their part-time. And now I'm going to hand over the presentation to Moo Moo Paw, who will talk about our preliminary findings.
Yes, thank you so much for the floor, Professor Ardeth. So I'm going to present about our findings. In addition to variation in the level or constraints imposed by the local political context, the political affiliations of the local authorities and of their respective residents play a role in determining the nature and scale of administrators' resident relationships. As time evolved and conflict expanded, we also see behavior and practices of local authorities have changed. Our key findings is the important role that political affiliations played in local governance. And immediately after the coup, we saw a significant disruptions in the roles of existing village ward administrators. Some of these village ward administrators chose to voluntarily resign, while others were removed or replaced by the SAC. Specifically, we observed that administrators affiliated with the NLD are most likely to either resign or be replaced by pro-military leaders. This trend is particularly evident in Burma-dominated areas as opposed to ethnic minority regions. The pro-military leaders who often take on the roles either due to the ideological beliefs, supporting the state, supporting the SEC, due to the pressure from the military junta, typically have stronger relationships with pro-military constituents, such as those affiliated with the USDP military affiliated party and groups like Pusoti, militia groups. This alignment generally leads to a greater sense of security among these groups. However, it is important to highlight that the relations between villages or tract war and SAC administrators are overseeing residents who predominantly support the NLD tend to be the most hostile. The tensions in this area underscore the friction between differing political affiliations within the local populations. On the other hand, we found that popularly elected leaders who often have a closer connection to the residents tend to get along better with the communities they served. and compared to the leader who have been appointed by the SAC. And these findings apply to the crucial importance of political leaders being in tune with the will and their preference of the people they govern. And here the chart shows the relationship between party affiliations of local leaders and the constituents at different levels categorized as hostile, neither hostile nor friendly, and friendlies. As you can see here, the chart shows the alignments or misalignments of the political affiliations between local leaders and their communities impact their relationships. For instance, in areas where local leaders and constituents share the same political beliefs, the relationships tend to be more friendly. Conversely, in regions where there is a significant political divide, particularly between pro-SAC leaders and NLD supporting residents, the relationships often falls into the hostile category. In the middle ground, Liberal as a neither hostile nor friendly typically represents area where there might be a mix of affiliations or where the political tension is less pronounced. Not all pro-SAC leaders have had hostile relationships with their constituents or have been subject to assassination. So the assassinations of village ward administrators, for instance, tend to be concentrated in Burma-dominated and high-resistant area and have been influenced by other factors such as the level of SAC control and the resistant member ability to penetrate the areas, and which is a topic which we need to further research. So now let's talk about the behavior and practices of local authorities and how they significantly influence perception within their communities. The way the local authorities conduct themselves, whether through their action, decisions, or public statements, play a crucial role in shaping whether they are seen as agents of the state or as the agents of the resistance or revolutions. And the local administrator perceived as the agents of the state are those who associate with the following criteria, like someone who are showing off the power, someone informing their SAC about the underground resistance movement, someone who organized the anti-resistance movement and campaigns, someone engaging in the corruption and taking money from people, someone escorting security forces to collect electricity fee or household list or arrest or suspects, and so on. And they also persist as a responsible for the arrest of young resistant leader as well. And local administrator, this narrative, PowerPoint slide, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Can you see it?
Yes, these
Okay.
are the narratives provided by respondents justifying the killing on abusing behavior practices. And one of our respondents and our local researcher from Sagain talk about their local leaders and quoted as a local head was killed for handling in young people into SAC hands. A while ago, he and the army ordered 2 young people who sing resistance song to sing on their knees for the entire night and slap their faces. And another respondent from Sagain talk about the white said that while of the village head in the nearby village gather relatives recruited and offered cash to poor people to attend military training by Pusoti pro-military militias, and she wants after people she have a personal grudge against and accused them of being resistant members, so they were arrested and tortured by the army. That's why she was killed by the local defense forces. After she was killed, her husband resigned from his position and stopped training militias. And the local administrator perceived as the revolution agent of the revolution, agent of the resistance, agent of the people are those who associate with the following criteria, who like village tract administrator who avoid fully implementing SAC policy, and those who warn people about supply check by the SAC Army, and they also someone who provided information to the resistant groups, and someone who protected members of the resistant and local communities, mediate conflict among the armed groups, and helping and releasing people detained by the SEC. And there are some examples that I am going to talk about. A village head of the maize control area here, and talk about and coded as agents of the revolution. So after the coup, our villager wanted us to join the civil disobedience movement, CDM, but the SAC told us that we will be arrested if we engage in CDM. We're afraid there will be no one to protect the villagers. So we continue to go to the office while quietly encouraging people to engage in CDM. When a handful of my villagers were arrested, I told the township administrators, please release them. Our ward has a history of not causing any disturbance. And the person may make a mistake, but please let him go this time. If you don't release them, you could suffer the consequences from the ethnic armed group in our area. So the township police released the detainees. Another one of our respondents from residents of the residents from the Mandalay said community member don't cause him trouble because he used to be active in community, social and religious affair. He is a USDP member, but he didn't show any overall support for it. And his wife was against his appointment, but he was also afraid he will be in trouble if he didn't take the position. So finally, we also find that village ward administrators also change their behavior and practices depending on the evolving political situations. And a chart here shows how village administrators have adjusted their behavior in accordance with the changing time. Here we see after the coup, some have resigned while others continue to serve. Among those who remained, some were arrested, likely as a result of their perceived commitment to the SEC or their involvement in controversial activities. Others choose to resign, possibly due to the increasing pressure and danger associated with their position. Yet some village ward administrators managed to continue in their role by adapting to the circumstances as best as they could. And we also observed that village ward administrators who continue in their role could be categorized into three district types based on their behavior. The first one is the abusive type, which usually associated with the agents of the state, who might have used their authority more aggressively. And the second one is the reform type, who attempted to adjust their approach in response to the evolving situation. And the last one is the moderator type, who likely sought to mediate and balance the tension within their communities, which is called as an agent of the resistant or agent of the people. So these are the examples of some administrators who change behavior and practices. One of our respondents from the Moon State said he used to be arrogant, but now his manner and style have changed. When I went to see him to get his recommendation letter, he told me, please feel free to ask for any help, but please spare my life. And another respondent from the Sky said the current SEC appointed ward administrators does not see people and barricade his house with 2 layers of mental fences. He closes his office by noon and lets 100 household leaders and clerks take care of most of the paperwork, such as a visitor registration. So in the conclusion part, the role of the local administrators in the current context is complex and evolving. On the other hand, on one hand, their actions can strengthen the military rules and legitimacy, particularly when they align themselves closely with the SAC. However, these local administrators can also become a flashpoint for violence because they are often unarmed, they become soft targets, and their assassination can spike their further violence and instability in their communities. Conversely, local administrators also have the potential to act as peacemakers. In many cases, they play a crucial role in mediating disputes and bailing out individuals involved in resistance movements, which can make a difference between life and death. So from the political perspective, it is important to note that conflicts in Myanmar have increasingly become localized due to the collapse of central authorities. As a result, policymakers need to focus not only on how different local governance arrangements have evolved, but also on crucial roles of local administrators played. Understanding whether these officials are contributing to the preventions or escalations of violence in their community is essential for developing strategies that can either stabilize or further destabilize the situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ardeth and Moo Moo. This is so fascinating. It's like getting a snapshot from the other side of the world into like what the political dynamics are on such a small level in Myanmar. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing what more research you do over the years on this, because I think the implications for after the coup will be really necessary to watch as well. We have a bunch of questions from the audience. So I want to turn to some of these first. So Mohammed Rahman from UTP asks, how do newly appointed local authorities maintain a balanced relationship with both the junta administration, so the SAC, and the shadow government, the NUG? And he clarifies, what is the confidence building mechanism for newly appointed local authorities?
Do you want me to answer now? Okay. So that is exactly the issue that we're focusing on. That's the big dilemma, right? You have to balance between the military junta, and you have to balance your acts with the local population. It depends on the local residents' political affiliations and position. You also have to balance your acts against, I would not say NUG, because if you look at your most of the ground level, some of the areas are controlled by PDFs, which is the People Defense Forces, which are the new resistant forces. Some of them are controlled by ethnic armed groups. So their behavior, their adjustments very much depends on which of the authorities are in control, and also the level of resistance. So again, it varies across the country. So in the situations where their position is kind of like secure, for instance, in the SAC area with low resistance level, then they're able to perform some of the functions of the SAC, but they still have to be very, very careful. And it also depends on the relationship that they establish with the local communities, because some of them are very much, that's why we talk about the behavior and practices of local authorities. It's not just the political affiliations, whether they ally with their residents, or whether they ally with the local populations or the resistance movement, but also the behavior. So they have to be very, very careful. They don't want to be seen as some supporter of the SAC, right? So some of them were also forced to fill the position. So they even as conflict escalated, you can see that many of them have changed their behavior. You know, they don't function openly as they used to. They don't open their office hours that long. And then they barricaded, like Moo Moo Paw showed, they barricaded their houses. But they still do, especially in SAC control area, they still impose a lot of policies such as conscription law by the SAC. So it varies on the situations, it varies on the personality, and people who are seen as misusing their powers and authority tend to be the one who are assassinated by the resistance. Yeah.
Thank you. Following on that question, we had a question about the repercussions for officials who wish to resign. Perhaps they have heard about officials who have been assassinated, or they don't want to face that difficult situation. But are there repercussions from the SAC, from the local community? Do you have any insights into that?
I can say something, but maybe Moo Moo Paw can also add to that. So at the beginning of the coup, a lot of local administrators resign. And especially those are the NLD appointed or NLD parties members. They resign in protest against the coup. And those who remain for a variety of reasons, either because of their ideological convictions, they agree with the SAC, or because, and many of them are in ethnic minority areas who see the coup as Burma fighting Burma, the Burma majority fighting Burma. So, most of them fled, but there is not necessarily actions against those who resign. But the one who stay in the positions are the one who face the actions, the consequence. The resistance movement will warn them. You need to resign. You need to resign. You should not be supporting. You should not be a part of this administration. You need to resign. So, so that's the, that's they are the one who face a lot of dilemma. So, and we also some of them were assassinated. Some of them were killed by the resistance movement. Or some of them, if they fail to perform their duty, they're removed by the SAC. So the one who resigns are not the one who face the necessary consequence, because they're already, they're not already, they are no longer in that kind of precarious position. But the one who face consequences are the one who stay maintaining the power. Yes, who are still working as the village administrators. Yeah. Before you want to add
Thanks,
anything?
Yes, can I add one more? Like, it also depend on the area where they live as well. They remain stay the same, but it gonna depend on the consequences are gonna depend on the residents who are supporting which group. If it's have a strong USDP or maybe military supporter, they will not get assassinated. But maybe if they are in pro NLD, or maybe who majority of them who are against military coup, they get assassinated. Yes, that's how what we see from our preliminary research. Yes.
I wonder if you could speak to, we've had some questions about more local specific situations, some insight into the situation in Lasho. Recent control of the township is changing rapidly. And I know you do not have access to all of these village tracts and wards, obviously everywhere at all times. But what are your insights into that sort of situation? Do you have any insight into what might be happening in Rakhine State, too, another area where control is highly contested?
Okay, so we have one local researcher there on a separate ongoing research, and it's in Lasho right now is I would say under the resistant under the ethnic groups control recently. the Northeastern Command has been taken over by the combined, especially the resistant forces, the ethnic armed resistant forces in the north. So for a long, long time, last year was a unique situation. It was a very peaceful areas, and partly because it's also considered ethnic minority areas in northern Shan State, and so we keep getting report where the village administrator position was very secure. I would not call this person uh, uh, agents of the state or agents of the revolution. I would call the person agent of the people. So basically, he has a very good relationship with the people. And then, so and in many situations, they needed the help of the village administrators, right? When they travel, they need documents. They apply for passport. They need a recommendation letter for the village administrator. They still need that. So, however, right now we completely lost contact with Lasho, our contact in Lasho, because all the internet access has been cut. So it's I don't know what is going to happen right now because of the there are it is not just the situation is not just the tension is not just between pro-SAC and anti-SAC. The Shan State or many other areas in the countries have layers and layers of fault line conflicts between, Ta'an and Kachin, Wa and Shan. So it's just like, on the local, at the local community levels, it will depends on the neighborhood, the type of neighborhood or Chinese populations. So we don't know what's happening right now. And because we lost contact with the people there. I think the situation is also similar to Rakhine. Initially, Rakhine Army maintained a ceasefire with the SAC. So for like at least 1 year, the situation was very peaceful. Our respondents or our researchers in Sagai, in Sitwe and, Zhaopiu, all of those areas, the places experience some relative stability. And at that point, it basically used some of the existing state administration, to channel resources for its own good. So instead of as far as I remember, we have fewer assassination of local authorities that serve the state there. So whereas in other areas, the resistance movement would like to eliminate all sort of state agencies that are associated with the military regime in Rakhine, they co-opt, right? They assume the state administrative structure. They reuse the state authorities to provide resources to their populations. And that was before last that was up to last year, when AA has not really controlled that much of territories. But so we don't really know what's going on, but the situation is very hostile in the areas occupied by the Rohingya populations. So so we don't really know what's happening with the local authorities and how they're doing, how they're responding. But the response by different ethnic armed groups to this local state administrative structure has been varied. So in some places, some armed groups are in favor of like eliminating the entire state administrative structure, but in other places, they're in favor of using this because they need agricultural loan, they need a microfinance loan, and that's the only channel through which they can capture the state resources.
Thank you. That is a really highly nuanced kind of situation. We have a question from Hunter Marston that I think gets a little bit more into that. He asks, is there any indication that reformed or moderated local administrators have undermined sympathy for the resistance or normalized the rule of the junta? Moo Moo, would you like to give that one a stab first?
Yes, I would say yes that they really show indicated that there is a reform and because I'm thinking whether should I give an example or give me a
I'll try to
yes,
give it a
yes.
try,
Give
and
me
then it will
yes.
give you some ideas.
Yeah.
So, the reason they're reforming is because they're afraid of being assassinated, right? They reform, they change their behaviors, and so they're not as arrogant as they used to. They don't openly impose the policies, strictly impose the SAC policies. So whether that undermines the sympathy of the resistance movement, I'm not sure. It varies on the situations. So now let me add another layer of nuances. So we show, and based on our collections of materials from the social media and conventional media, the narratives here is that people who are killed, right? The administrators who are killed are the one who are abusive, the one who collected revenues on behalf of the SAC, the one who informed the SAC. But in some cases, we find that there were mistakes made by the resistance movement, right? And sometimes the one who were killed are very much liked by the community members. So that, and so far we presented as if the community members are allied with the resistance movement. Well, given that the resistance against the regime, the military regime, is overwhelming and nationwide, but in some cases, it's not necessarily the case. There was a case where local administrator was very much liked by the local communities, but he escaped the attempted assassination of the resistance movement. So the local residents were very much angry at the resistance movement, right? So, okay, so when they modify their behavior, so they don't go out at night, and then they let their responsibilities being handled by 100 household, and then they only meet the residents at the Buddhist temples, right, to avoid the assassination. I think that might have reduced the possibilities of being assassinated, and that might have reduced the hatred toward them. But I'm not sure whether it's undermined the resistance movement sympathy for them, because then again, it's very complex. Even now, let me add another layer. In every village, there are, a few people support the military, a few people, some people. So in our research, we just say that majority NLD supporter constituents, but in some of the situation, it's more like it's more complicated. Authorities who are very abusive, but they have not met with assassination threats or assassination. So I would say it depends. Yeah.
It definitely does depend. I think one hallmark of your research is that the situation is subject to change, and it also really depends on so many highly localized factors that it's impossible to make a generalization. We have another interesting question here from Christina Fing. She asks, for more discussion about the local authorities' handling of conscription orders from the regime. So the conscription orders came through earlier this year. And so this is quite a big ask, it seems, of local authorities, but is the conscription order dependent on these local authorities cooperating in order to be successful? And is there a way that the local authorities who are willing to work with the junta facilitate that, and those who are willing to work against the junta, either to protect their people or work with the resistance, can help to slow down that process of conscription? What are your thoughts?
So I'll say something and Moo Paw can add to this. So yeah, we pay attention to that, but even though our survey and interviews were not based on this updated information. And currently we're also doing another round of survey to take a look at it. So again, it varies on the local situations. The areas that we in the SAC control area, and most of the conscriptions are like openly done in SAC control area with low resistant level. So here we see a lot of complaints and articles about abusive local authorities who extort money from people in exchange for exempting people into being conscripted, or people who just local authorities who were just falsely recruited people. And again, when you see the local authorities being assassinated, you will see that the rationale provided by the armed resistance group is it's because they are implementing SAC policy, so on and so forth. But there are some other areas where local authorities, I would say these are the agents of the people, right? So our article was like kind of like black and white. We said agent of the state or agent of the revolution. And one of my colleagues, after having read this article, pointed out to me that, hey, what about agent of the people, right? So it's somebody who is in between. So we see that some of the local authorities collaborated and worked together with local communities. So what they do is that they're looking for people who are willing to serve, who are willing to be in the conscription service, who are who are desperate. Usually they're from from very poor socioeconomic background, and then the community will collect the money and to pay for these conscripts, right? So there are a lot of creative arrangements between the local authorities and the local populations. But as I have shown the LED data, that the number of local authorities being assassinated have increased after the impositions of the conscription. So that show that that there's another round of very repressive policies being implemented, and which the disproportionate portion of the responsibility have been put on the local authorities. And the way they respond to how they would implement this determine, right? This is basically a life and death issue, whether they be assassinated or, how well they are able to deal with the situation. Yeah.
Thank you. And Moo Moo, you
Paw,
get the
want
last word.
Yes. So I would say like before the regimes have launched the conscription law, the military side and also some area also they forcibly recruit people already. And based on that, there's another one reason that they get assassination, and also that they were against by the people as well. And there's some area where they talk about the local authority, and for some people they also have I would say like they have in the pressure situation to get the number that assigned by the regimes to recruit people. So they also like they negotiate with the village, and some are like they also have a structure or maybe have a systematic like each people they have a list of household in the village, so they recruit people based on like they drawing the pool, or they have different kind of strategy to recruit people. But if some people are not happy with that, I mean basically not people, majority of them are not happy, so they flee, and some of them go to abroad, and they left the country and they work out the country, something like that. And but for the local authority, they also have to give the number. So we heard like some example of a case from one region. I would say in the Molamyai or something. They recruit like a people, and they give they give a money because they are closely working with the local authority. I mean, the people from villagers, they give the money to each other to be recruited instead of them. So we always say that we listen more about people rather than the perspective of local authority, but we do have some narrative that how do they recruit people, like they use different strategy of recruiting people. Yeah. And based on that, you will see based on the charts or ACLE data, they are assassinated, but we haven't done the research based on what kind of strategy they are using to get assassinated. Yes.
Thank you so much. And unfortunately, we have run out of time. So we will have to end here. Thank you so much, Professor Ardeth and Moo Moo, for joining us. Your research is really important for helping us to understand what life is like at the very local level in Myanmar right now, and the kind of trade-off decisions that these local administrators have to make, whether they're going to work with the junta, work with the resistance, or work for the people who are within their village tracts. And I really appreciate your nuance and entertaining all these questions. And thank you so much to our audience for asking such excellent questions. Again, you can find the link to the paper in the webinar chat, but if you miss it, we're going to post it on the STIMSIM website as well. And you can also find it by Googling our authors' names. So again, thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.